What's up, my fellow Shield Brothers? Shield Brother 6 here with our second episode of What If Mondays. And today we're going to be talking about a very popular alternate history question. What if the South won the Civil War? So let's... With that, let's get started with today's episode. Let's talk about the war. So, the first 7 southern states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America in February of 1861. The first hostilities of Fort Sumter in South Carolina happened in April 1861. President Davis and Robert E. Lee began negotiations at the end of the war with Lincoln, cabinet members and Congress members to cease hostilities permanently. The parties negotiated treaties regarding commerce between the two nations. They determined that subsequent territories desirous of statehood get to decide on their own which nation they would like to join and other border issues, therefore creating the United States and the Confederate States of America, co-aligning and coexisting, although tensely. So the aftermath of this decision. The lives of over 620,000 men on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line are spared due to an earlier end in the war. The CSA is not pillaged or sacked by the Union forces as it is in our timeline. The state of West Virginia is not formed by Lincoln, and the Confederate state cities and plantations are not burned. There are no draft riots in New York City, and the northern newspaper editors are not jailed for disagreeing with Lincoln. Robert E. Lee's plantation, Arlington, is not stolen by the U.S. government and made into the Union Cemetery. So that's what the aftermath of this decision and peace would cause in this new timeline. So let's talk about what the post-war for this alternate timeline would be. Well, while the North would have been militarily and economically dominant, the South would have been important leverage of its own, including, for example, control of the Mississippi River Delta, which was very good for trade. And therefore, of the river trade would be controlled by the South. And that proved very important in the development of the American Midwest. So the Confederate States would also have been a better geographical position to exercise influence in the Caribbean Sea, though it would have needed a major naval construction program to succeed in any interference or commerce down there. Some leaders in Richmond might have seen this as a strategically essential. However, to protect the southern states' access to international markets and to block U.S. or European navies from the Gulf of Mexico, they would also need to build a navy. So that's what the post-war would look like. There would not be such a long reconstruction period or a reconstruction period at all due to the separation and the anonymity of the South. Therefore, President Davis would be leading the Confederate States of America. So, independence. So the residents of the Confederate States of America might still be celebrating their Independence Day over 150 years later. Perhaps on either December the 24th, when South Carolina declared its independence, or February 9th, when the southern states formed the CSA. So not only would be the 4th of July celebration, but there would also be the February 9th celebration for their independence from what they would deem as a overbearing union that they had seen unfit to rule and control their territories. So the capitals. So, Richmond, Virginia served as the capital of the Confederate States of America for almost the whole of the American Civil War. Not only was Richmond the seat of political power for the Confederacy, but it also served as a vital source of munitions, armament, weapon supplies, and manpower for the Confederate States and the Confederate States Navy. As such, would have been defended at all costs regardless of its political status, and also would have remained as the capital in post-war times. The city was less than 100 miles away from the Union capital of Washington, D.C. The Union capital was, of course, Washington, D.C., but it is possible that it would be moved back to Philadelphia post-war due to the fact that it was moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. to satisfy the southern states in the early part of the Union. That way, there was more of a middle ground, kind of a meet you halfway there kind of thing. So since that would no longer be needed, and it would be so close to the southern forces, in case of any future conflicts, they probably would have moved the Union capital back to Philadelphia. Sorry. So this would be the lay of the land in this alternate timeline. Alaska would still be controlled by Russia, Canada would still be its own thing, and then there would be the Union States, the Confederate States, and then Mexico. And this is a very good possible layout of the map of how it could be. Although it's a very good chance that a few of the Western Union states would also have become Southern states. And you can see that it's very possible, like I said earlier, that they would have influence in the Caribbean, and as you can see there with the red. So what would the relations be like in this alternate timeline? Well, Richmond would likely have been a very fertile ground for European powers seeking to constrain the northern states. At the same time, strong abolitionist sentiment in the north would have continued. Enduring slavery in the South could well have provoked considerable political tensions, if not armed skirmishes, along the border states, if committed Northern activists attempted to maintain and expand the Underground Railroad for escaped slaves, or even to foment rebellion within the Confederate States. This could have very well led to a war sooner or later, again, a second civil war as you would, or a war of reconquering for the Union. So let's talk about, of course, everyone's biggest question for if the South had won: slavery. What would that be like? What would happen with that? What's going on? Well, while slavery would have most likely been persisting in the South, it is uncertain for how long or if at all. There is a very good possibility that the Confederate States would have abolished slavery in their constitution as to build relations in foreign affairs and provide economic stability. Because they would understand that we just lost so many men over this, that the other nations that were trying to trade with frown upon this, as well as the North frowns upon this, so does Mexico, so everyone that they're having relations with would frown upon having slavery. So therefore, it would be more of a indentured servitude possible, or probably sharecropping. Sharecropping would be a very good solution for the slavery problem that would still keep them in the relative same situation without slavery. However, it is also very likely that the slavery could have lasted all the way up to the mid-teens of the 1900s, when there would be a very good chance that that would change. It was also very possible that these slaves, upon hearing in the 19-teens the new communist manifestos, etc., that they would like to rise up, which is why there are very many possibilities with what could happen to the slaves of the southern states. So here's a list of possible events that could happen if this alternate timeline had happened. So 1863, Canada is created. In 1864, Abraham Lincoln, then Republican, loses the presidential election in a landslide because of his loss of the South. Late 1860s, Russia attempts to set Alaska to the United States. However, the $7 million price tag is too much money to have financially drained America from the Civil War. In our timeline, we were able to do it because we re-solidified. However, if they had not re-solidified and were still so drained from the Civil War, they would not have bought Alaska. In the 1870s, Cuba is bought by the Confederate States from Spain. In 1871, Germany unified into a single sovereign state, such as in our timeline. In 1877, Samuel Tilden, a Democrat, becomes president of the U.S. after winning the previous year's election. In 1880, James Longstreet, a Whig, becomes president of the Confederate States. In 1881, James G. Blaine, a Republican known for his hardline anti-Confederacy policies, becomes president of the U.S. after defeating President Tilden in the previous year's election. So that's just a short list of things that I kind of picked and chose of what could happen after some reading and stuff. If you enjoyed this, I've got more selections, and if you think I'm wrong, you can always comment in the comment section for me down below. So thank you so much for watching this alternate history lesson. This has been Shield Brother 6 with your second episode of What If Mondays. I got a lot of this information and influence from Henry Turtledove, who is a very good alternate history author, and if you like that kind of thing, check him out for sure, especially if you like What If the South Had Won, etc. As well as I did a lot of other researching and just some of my own ideas. And as always, leave a like if you like this kind of thing, leave a dislike if you don't, leave me a comment or a suggestion, and as always, I'll catch y'all next time.